What if the man you thought was strong enough to face anything has been hiding a devastating secret from his own family? It began, not with an announcement, but with a silence. A silence so deliberate, so carefully maintained that only in retrospect did it scream. In early spring, during a routine public event in Los Angeles, Prince Harry paused midway through a casual conversation with a veteran. It was a small thing, barely noticeable. A few seconds too long before he remembered the man's name. A quiet fumble in recalling the date of a charity initiative he'd launched himself. Cameras clicked, smiles continued, and nothing more was said. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But for those closest to him, those who had followed his journey from grief-stricken boy walking behind his mother's coffin to independent royal renegade, the signs were growing harder to ignore. According to multiple sources and recently leaked internal documents, Prince Harry has been diagnosed with early-onset memory loss, a neurodegenerative condition. Progressive, irreversible, tragic. But the world didn't find out from a press release. Not from a dignified family statement or a heartfelt sit-down interview advocating awareness. No, it emerged through a leak. A quiet document passed from one hand to another until it reached a journalist brave enough to go public. And the most chilling part of it all, it wasn't the diagnosis. It was the cover-up. Multiple insiders alleged that Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex and Harry's wife, deliberately chose to suppress the news. That she instructed medical professionals to keep it confidential, even from the royal family. That the reason behind this decision wasn't privacy or emotional shielding, but brand preservation. A fear that this revelation would harm their Netflix deals, podcast investments, and image as an unshakable power couple. This is the story of what really happened behind palace gates and Montecito walls. A story not about royalty, but about betrayal, about power, about the cost of image, and the tragedy of a man caught between his truth and his silence. Let's rewind. Since stepping back from their royal duties in 2020, Harry and Meghan have positioned themselves as crusaders for authenticity and mental health. They've given interviews to Oprah, launched multi-million-dollar partnerships with streaming giants, and framed themselves as victims of a cold and outdated institution. Much of the world listened, and many sympathized. But beneath the surface of public speeches and documentary voiceovers, something else was growing. Stress, repeated travel, legal battles, media backlash, family estrangement. And for Harry, who'd spoken candidly about his childhood trauma and lingering anxiety, the weight of it all wasn't just emotional, it was physical. According to confidential medical memos reviewed by sources close to the case, Harry began showing signs of neurological stress as early as late 2022. Slowed reaction time, difficulty with short-term memory, moments of disorientation. What might be dismissed as exhaustion in an average person took on an entirely different significance in a 38-year-old public figure under immense psychological strain. When he finally sought medical advice, the result was grim. The diagnosis: early-onset memory decline with indications of neurological degradation linked to prolonged exposure to trauma, stress, and potentially unresolved PTSD symptoms from childhood. There was fear, confusion, but also, reportedly, relief. A name for the fog, an explanation for the forgetfulness, a reason for the way things weren't connecting the way they used to. But that relief, according to those who were present during the consultations, was short-lived. The moment the diagnosis was confirmed, Meghan allegedly stepped in. One witness, a staffer who has since left the Sussex circle, recounted a chilling exchange. She told them this had to stay between them. "We can't afford this getting out," she said. "Not now. Not with the platform we're building." The room went silent. Was it panic? A protective instinct? Or calculated damage control? For Meghan, the stakes were high. The couple's entire brand was built on relatability, resilience, and their so-called second chance away from the crown. They had been paid handsomely to tell their story, but only the version that worked. A story of a liberated prince, standing tall and speaking out, not one quietly battling cognitive decline. If the truth leaked, if it became known that Harry was slowly, undeniably deteriorating, then their brand wasn't just at risk. It was over. Investors would pull out. Productions would stall. Public interest might morph into pity. And so, as sources allege, Meghan chose to protect the brand, not the man. In the months following the diagnosis, Harry continued to appear at events. He smiled, gave speeches, made podcast appearances. But those watching closely began to notice a subtle shift. The pauses were longer, the responses more rehearsed. At times, Meghan would subtly step in to finish a sentence or redirect the conversation. It was subtle, almost imperceptible unless you were looking for it. The public didn't know. The royal family didn't know. According to one palace aide, they were completely in the dark. No one told them anything, not even Charles. It's one thing to step away from duty, but to withhold something this serious, it crossed a line. So why did no one blow the whistle earlier? Some say fear. Others, loyalty. But more than one source has now come forward describing a tightly controlled environment around the Sussexes. There was a cone of silence, one former employee said. Everything had to go through Meghan. Nothing got out without her approval. People were scared of losing their jobs, of being sued, of being labeled disloyal. Eventually, the silence cracked. A former medical assistant, reportedly disturbed by what she saw as a violation of moral ethics, leaked a redacted copy of Harry's medical assessment to a journalist. That journalist, after months of verification and legal review, published an exposé that sent shockwaves through the inner circles of power. The response was immediate and divided. Supporters of the Sussexes claimed it was an invasion of privacy. Harry deserves medical confidentiality like anyone else, one tweet read. But others demanded accountability. You can't campaign for mental health awareness while hiding your own husband's condition from his family. At the center of it all is Harry, once again, the boy without a mother, now a man with a truth he may not even fully grasp. What happens when a man entrusted with reshaping royal legacy can no longer trust his own memory? What happens when his voice, so vital to their brand, is weakened not by scandal, but by biology? More importantly, what happens when the one person meant to stand beside him through sickness and health is accused of hiding the sickness to maintain the wealth? This is not a tabloid story. This is not gossip. This is a reckoning. You've heard their version. Now, it's time to hear what they didn't want you to know. And what you're about to discover may change everything you thought you knew about Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and the silent battle that's been unfolding beneath the surface. In the wake of the leak, the Sussex camp went quiet. There was no official denial, no press conference, not even a clarifying post from their carefully managed social media accounts. Instead, there was a chilling silence that only deepened the suspicion. Sources close to the matter described a behind-the-scenes scramble, a legal team dispatched to identify the leaker, phone calls to platforms asking for takedowns, and frantic strategy meetings about how, if ever, they should address the diagnosis. But the truth had already started to fracture the image they'd spent years building. Supporters who had once championed the couple's fight for independence began to ask hard questions. Why had Harry's own family been left in the dark? Why was the man who had stood on global stages advocating for openness now being shielded in silence? Was it Meghan who insisted on secrecy, or was Harry complicit in this concealment? Perhaps the most disturbing reports came not from journalists or palace aides, but from people who had briefly interacted with Harry in private settings, behind the lights, off camera, away from the polished lenses. One former aide described a moment that haunted her. "We were going over a briefing document for an upcoming event," she said, and he just froze. He stared at the page for what felt like a minute. Then he looked at me and said, "Didn't we already do this event last month?" But we hadn't. It was new, and it wasn't the only time. Others noticed changes in his speech pattern. Less fluidity. Repetition. A reliance on Meghan to steer the conversation or redirect questions. In one recorded podcast that never aired, Harry allegedly lost track of a story he'd told hundreds of times about serving in Afghanistan. Producers edited around the gaps, but those in the room didn't forget. Still, Meghan kept smiling, kept pushing forward. Whether it was strategic or a desperate attempt to maintain normalcy is unclear. But what's undeniable is that, from the moment of diagnosis, everything changed, even if nothing was admitted. And while Harry may have initially agreed to keep the information private, there is growing evidence that his trust in that silence began to erode. A close friend, who asked to remain anonymous, described a heart-wrenching conversation with the prince. "He asked me if I thought he was broken," the friend said. "He said he didn't feel like himself anymore. That sometimes he'd forget what day it was. That he was scared." When asked why he hadn't told his father or brother, the answer was heartbreaking. "She said we had to be strong, that they wouldn't understand, that they'd just use it against us." They, of course, referring to the royal family. The very people Harry once said he'd do anything to protect from media intrusion, now cast as threats to his autonomy. It paints a devastating picture, not of villains and heroes, but of isolation, miscommunication, and a man whose grip on reality may be slowly slipping through no fault of his own. Even more disturbing were the whispered rumors about why Meghan wanted the diagnosis hidden. Some insiders claim it had nothing to do with Harry's well-being at all, but everything to do with the deals on the table. Their Netflix docuseries, which painted them as resilient and future-facing, would collapse under the weight of a neurological condition. Sponsors might pull back. Public sympathy could easily morph into skepticism. Would a prince battling cognitive decline be seen as a liability rather than a figure of strength? And if that image shattered, so too would the empire they had spent years trying to build in California, a kingdom of content, visibility, and branding. But at what cost? Even more questions began to emerge. What did Harry truly understand about his condition? Did he fully grasp what it meant? Or was he told it was just stress? Did Meghan present the diagnosis as something temporary? Or was the full reality withheld even from him? Medical experts we consulted said such a scenario, while rare, is not impossible. Patients suffering from memory loss can become vulnerable to manipulation, especially if they trust the person guiding them. If information is withheld or selectively framed, they may not fully grasp the severity of their situation. And yet, in every photo op, every video clip, every pre-approved public appearance, the image remained the same, a smiling couple walking hand in hand, pushing their new life narrative. The diagnosis, this life-altering truth, was completely absent. Until now. This story matters, not just because it involves royalty or celebrity, but because it reveals something far deeper about human nature, power, and the price of silence. It matters because there are millions watching, learning, idolizing these figures as examples of courage and mental strength. And if the story they're telling is only half the truth, then what lessons are we really absorbing? It matters because the royal family, the very institution Harry accused of secrecy and suppression, may have been the ones left betrayed, not by the press, but by their own blood. And most of all, it matters because at the heart of this storm is a man, not a prince, not a brand. A man who may be slipping away while the people around him argue over image, deals, and legacy. So as you listen, ask yourself this. If someone you loved was silently suffering, what would you do? Would you tell the world? Would you protect them from judgment? Or would you silence the truth to protect your own power? Because that is the question at the center of this scandal. And by the time this story is finished, you might not just see Prince Harry differently. You might see all of them differently. This is not the fairy tale ending they promised. This is the silence before the collapse. It started, like many life-altering moments, in private. No flashing cameras. No press releases. Just a quiet medical consultation in a discreet Los Angeles clinic, booked under a pseudonym. There was no fanfare. Only a growing concern, one that Prince Harry could no longer ignore. By late 2022, those closest to him were noticing changes. Harry, known for his charm and quick wit, had begun repeating stories during interviews. At a friend's dinner party, he blanked on the name of a long-time acquaintance. In another moment, he walked into a room and abruptly stopped, seemingly forgetting why he was there. Meghan reportedly brushed off these signs as stress-related. "He's just tired," she allegedly told a friend. "We've been working nonstop." But it wasn't just fatigue. It wasn't until Harry forgot a key detail during a Zoom meeting with mental health advocates, an event he personally championed, that alarm bells truly began ringing. The lapse was subtle but significant. He misattributed a quote to the wrong speaker, then appeared confused when gently corrected. Meghan was present during the call. She ended the session early. A few days later, Harry was driven to a private appointment, one that, according to leaked documents, marked the beginning of an unraveling. Sources familiar with the situation alleged that Harry's physician referred him for a neurological evaluation. The findings were sobering. Prince Harry, only in his late 30s, was exhibiting signs of early-onset memory loss. The diagnosis, an early stage of neurodegeneration possibly linked to long-term exposure to psychological stress, unresolved trauma, and emotional strain. The news stunned the medical team. Though young, Harry's personal history aligned with a number of contributing factors. Childhood bereavement, intense public scrutiny, military service, a strained relationship with his family, all compounded by a recent uprooting from the UK and the relentless pressures of reinventing himself in a new world where every step was both monetized and criticized. Dr. J, whose name was redacted in the leaked report, summarized the concern succinctly. Symptoms suggest deterioration in cognitive flexibility and short-term memory retention. Contributing causes likely include prolonged psychological distress. Condition may be progressive. It was, in clinical terms, a quiet diagnosis. A disease that doesn't crash into one's life, but slowly rewires it, day by day, memory by memory. From the outside, the prince appeared unchanged. But inside the walls of that consultation room, a very different picture was emerging. Harry was reportedly devastated. The man who had always strived to define himself beyond his royal title, who had fought to build a legacy of truth and resilience, was now grappling with a diagnosis that threatened his identity at its core. What happens when a man known for his voice begins to lose his grasp on words? When someone celebrated for recalling and retelling his painful past can no longer fully remember it? What follows is a painful yet essential part of this story. The immediate aftermath of the diagnosis did not follow the traditional trajectory of seeking support or assembling a care plan. Instead, it reportedly became an exercise in containment. According to multiple witnesses familiar with the clinic visit and the private discussions that followed, Meghan Markle's response was not centered on crisis management or emotional support. It was focused on secrecy. She was calm, one staffer recalled. But it was a different kind of calm. Strategic. Controlled. She asked the doctor who would have access to the file. Asked how tightly information could be sealed. When told it would be limited to necessary medical personnel, she said, "Good. Let's keep it that way." There was no discussion, the source claimed, of telling Harry's family. No immediate plan for broader disclosure. Instead, Meghan allegedly began coordinating with their legal team, seeking to understand who could legally speak on the matter, and more importantly, how to prevent them from doing so. This decision, insiders claim, marked the beginning of a tightly managed silence. Those present were allegedly instructed to refer to the consultation only as a routine checkup. Any follow-up appointments were to be scheduled under alternate names, with locations shifted to facilities further away from Los Angeles. Every document was sealed. Every phone was turned off during internal discussions. For Harry, the days that followed were marked by conflicting emotions. Friends say he appeared unusually quiet, withdrawn. In one private moment, he allegedly told a close confidant, "Maybe I just need rest. Maybe it's all in my head." It's unclear whether he fully accepted the diagnosis or if he had been given the full picture. People assume that because someone is famous, they're automatically told everything about their condition, said Dr. J.D. Kaplan, a Los Angeles-based neurologist familiar with high-profile cases. But if a patient is in emotional distress, doctors may communicate indirectly. And if a spouse or representative takes the lead, it's very easy for the patient to receive a watered-down version of the truth. It's possible Harry believed he was simply suffering from exhaustion, that a few weeks of rest would restore his clarity. But the truth, written plainly in the report, told a darker story. Signs suggest early neurodegeneration. Memory retention will continue to decline unless intervention is initiated. But what intervention? According to neurological experts, early-onset memory loss, especially when stress-induced, can be managed but not reversed. Treatment plans often include cognitive therapy, medication, and critically, emotional stability. That last piece may have been the most elusive for Harry. In Montecito, every day was a balancing act. Between filming projects, media meetings, and orchestrated public appearances, Harry's life had become a production, one he wasn't fully in control of. The pressure to maintain a flawless public image conflicted directly with the vulnerability required to treat his condition. And then there's the legal pressure. One senior media consultant who previously worked with Meghan on her Archetypes podcast described the environment as tightly micromanaged. Every talking point, every visual, every bit of narration was reviewed multiple times, she said. There was a sense that any deviation from the image would damage the brand. So when something like this diagnosis came along, I don't think they saw it as a medical issue. I think they saw it as a PR threat. The irony could not be more cruel. For years, Harry had been one of the most vocal global advocates for mental health awareness. He'd opened up about panic attacks, therapy, and childhood trauma. He urged people to seek help, to speak up, to be honest. But now, faced with the most serious health crisis of his life, he was allegedly being told to keep quiet, not by the palace he had escaped, but by the woman he had chosen as his safe place. As whispers began to circulate within inner circles, strange gaps in memory, staff turnover, increasingly rehearsed appearances. Some former employees say they were ordered to sign enhanced NDAs. It wasn't standard confidentiality, one said. It was fear-based. Everything had to stay locked in. We couldn't even discuss it among ourselves. By early 2023, the situation had stabilized, but only cosmetically. Harry appeared in a few public videos, made a surprise charity appearance in New York, and continued to promote mental wellness. But behind the scenes, more appointments were being made. More tests. More questions. One aide noted a disturbing trend. Harry stopped attending internal planning sessions. Meghan would arrive alone or with a spokesperson. When asked, she reportedly said he was meditating or doing breath work. But breath work doesn't stop brain fog. It doesn't fix cognitive decline. And though medical records are protected under law, leaked summaries began surfacing through back channels. Anonymized, stripped of identifiable data, but still damning. Enough for journalists to begin digging. Enough for insiders to start whispering. Enough to spark what would eventually become a full-blown expose. By the time the story was published, carefully verified, legally vetted, and corroborated by no less than 3 former associates, the public was blindsided. But for those who had been watching, the signs had always been there. They were just hidden. Strategically. Quietly. Deliberately. This was not just a diagnosis. It was the beginning of a cover-up. Public figures live under intense scrutiny. Every smile, every word, every gesture is analyzed and interpreted. For Prince Harry, this scrutiny was never going to fade, especially after his step back from official royal duties. Yet in recent months, sharp-eyed observers and insiders began to notice subtle changes in Harry's demeanor that raised questions. At first glance, Harry appeared to be the same charismatic, confident figure. He continued to attend high-profile events, speak at mental health conferences, and participate in podcasts and interviews. But beneath the polished veneer, cracks began to show. During a charity event in London, attendees recalled Harry pausing mid-sentence, struggling to find the right words. His usual quick wit was replaced by longer silences, and at times he seemed to lose track of conversations. In private settings, close friends reported moments where Harry seemed confused or disoriented, forgetting recent conversations or events they had shared. One of his closest confidants said, "I'd see him zoning out during meetings. He would ask the same question twice, sometimes within minutes. It was like he was trying to catch up with his own thoughts." Several of these incidents were caught on camera. A viral clip showed Harry at a public speaking event hesitating before answering a straightforward question about his charitable work. The pause was longer than normal. Some viewers dismissed it as nerves, but others speculated about something deeper. Hashtags like #HarryMemory started trending quietly on social media, accompanied by theories ranging from stress and exhaustion to serious health concerns. What made these behaviors even more concerning was their contrast with Harry's long-standing persona. Known for his resilience and sharp mind, the signs of cognitive difficulty were difficult for fans and critics alike to ignore. But what was really happening behind the scenes? Experts familiar with neurological conditions explained that early symptoms of memory loss can be subtle and easily mistaken for stress or fatigue. Difficulty recalling recent events, repeating stories, losing track in conversations, these are classic signs often overlooked in busy individuals. Dr. Emily Harris, a neurologist who has worked with high-profile patients, explained, in someone under constant pressure, these symptoms might be chalked up to burnout or anxiety. But when they persist or worsen, it signals the need for deeper investigation. Friends say Harry was deeply aware of these changes but tried to push through, driven by a sense of duty to his work and a desire not to appear vulnerable. There were moments of frustration. One insider revealed he would sometimes apologize mid-conversation for forgetting something. It clearly upset him. But Meghan was always there to step in, redirecting or finishing his sentences. This reliance, while understandable, created a new dynamic that wasn't typical for Harry. Some close to him wondered if the dependence was part of the impact of his condition or a byproduct of managing the public image carefully. One notable instance occurred during a podcast recording where Harry spoke about his military service. Halfway through, he suddenly stopped, appearing confused about the timeline. The host skillfully moved the conversation on, but behind the scenes, producers scrambled to edit out the awkward moments. Harry's publicist later described the incident as technical difficulties, but insiders knew it was far more. Another layer to this story involves the stress Harry faced from the media and his family's scrutiny. His well-documented feud with the palace, combined with relentless tabloid coverage, contributed to ongoing psychological strain, an additional risk factor for neurological decline. What's more, the strain of juggling public expectations and personal struggles created a perfect storm. Mental health professionals caution that trauma and chronic stress can accelerate cognitive issues, especially in those genetically predisposed. For Harry, whose life has been marked by loss and high-stakes challenges, this was a serious concern. Sources close to the prince revealed that his days were filled with cognitive exercises, therapy sessions, and medical appointments, all conducted away from public view. Yet despite these efforts, the challenges continued. This paints a complex picture of a man battling invisible enemies, ones not seen by the public, but painfully felt every day. Have you ever wondered how someone so strong can quietly suffer, hidden beneath layers of fame and expectation? What would you do if you were forced to pretend everything was fine when inside you were slipping? The tension between Harry's public appearances and private struggles creates a poignant contrast. It's the story of resilience shadowed by vulnerability. Throughout this time, Meghan's presence remained constant, sometimes as an anchor, sometimes as a gatekeeper. But the question remains, did the pressure to maintain appearances force Harry to hide his condition even from those closest to him? And what toll did that take on his mental and physical health? The answers lie in the delicate balance between truth and image, a balance that would soon be tested beyond anything the royal family or public could imagine. When the diagnosis was delivered, it marked a turning point, not only in Prince Harry's life but in the dynamic of his relationship with Meghan Markle and the management of their public image. Sources close to the couple report that Meghan's immediate response was to contain the information and shield it from outside eyes, including the royal family. According to confidential accounts, the atmosphere during the medical consultations shifted palpably when Meghan stepped in. While Harry reportedly grappled with the news emotionally, Meghan focused on practical considerations. The first question she asked medical staff was who would have access to the diagnosis. When told it would be limited to necessary personnel, she expressed relief but insisted that the circle remain as tight as possible. Multiple insiders confirmed that Meghan conveyed a firm directive. This diagnosis was not to be shared beyond the inner sanctum. Not with Buckingham Palace, not with the prince's brothers or father, and crucially, not with the media. Why such secrecy? The answer appears to be tied to a complex mix of image management, brand protection, and fear of public perception. Meghan and Harry had, by that time, established a media empire built on their narrative of overcoming adversity and creating a new, transparent royal life free from the confines of tradition. To reveal a debilitating medical condition risked undermining that narrative completely. One former staff member who worked closely with the couple said, Meghan was adamant. She said this information could destroy everything they'd worked for. It wasn't just about privacy, it was a strategic move to protect their future. This move was met with mixed feelings inside the Sussex household. Some aides felt conflicted, worried that keeping Harry's condition secret was a betrayal not only of family but of the very values the couple espoused publicly. Others feared repercussions, both legal and personal, if they breached the code of silence. The chilling effect extended beyond medical staff. Leaked reports suggest that those involved in Harry's care were subjected to warnings and confidentiality agreements that went beyond standard practice. One former medical assistant recalled signing a non-disclosure agreement that specifically forbade any mention of the diagnosis outside the immediate care team. But perhaps most troubling was the decision not to inform the royal family. Harry's father, Prince Charles, and brother, Prince William, have historically been involved in the care and support of family members facing health crises. Not telling them was seen by some insiders as a fracture in family trust. An anonymous palace source revealed, the royals found out only after the leak. They were blindsided. It felt like a betrayal. They wanted to support Harry, but were left out completely. For Meghan, the decision appeared calculated. Protecting Harry's privacy was one thing, but protecting their public brand was another. The couple's numerous lucrative contracts, including the multi-million-dollar Netflix deal, were tied to a narrative of resilience and empowerment. Any hint of weakness could jeopardize these ventures. Marketing experts familiar with celebrity brand management say this is a common dilemma. You have to maintain a consistent image for investors and audiences. Revealing a serious health condition risks shifting the public's perception from admiration to pity or skepticism. Critics argue that this approach runs counter to the couple's vocal advocacy for mental health transparency. By hiding Harry's diagnosis, Meghan was accused of hypocrisy, pushing openness while orchestrating silence for personal gain. But supporters of Meghan say the decision was born of love and protection, not calculation. They argue that no one would want their partner's vulnerabilities broadcasted to the world, especially when the prognosis was uncertain. Still, the consequences of this secrecy were significant. Without full disclosure, Harry's family was unable to provide the support they might have offered. Medical professionals outside the Sussex circle were left in the dark, limiting the quality and scope of care. Moreover, keeping such a secret created tension within the household. Some aides described a growing sense of isolation around Harry, exacerbated by the need to maintain a flawless public facade. The pressure to hide his condition also reportedly affected Harry's mental health, feeding into cycles of anxiety and self-doubt. The decision to keep the diagnosis quiet was not made lightly, but it set the stage for a battle far beyond the medical, a battle over loyalty, trust, and the true meaning of support in the face of crisis. As this story unfolds, it raises uncomfortable questions about the cost of image preservation. At what point does protecting a brand become more harmful than protective? And who pays the price when silence replaces honesty? The next chapters will explore how this secrecy affected not only Harry but the wider royal family, and the implications it holds for public figures grappling with private struggles. The revelation of Prince Harry's diagnosis and the subsequent decision by Meghan to keep it secret sent shockwaves through the royal family. Many of them learned about it only after the information was leaked to the press. For a family used to managing public narratives tightly, this unexpected breach opened a new chapter of tension, mistrust, and fractured relationships. When news first reached Buckingham Palace, it reportedly triggered a mix of concern, confusion, and anger. Sources within the palace describe a scene of disbelief. The family had long suspected that Harry was struggling, but had never been informed of such a serious medical condition. It was a breach of trust that cut deep. Prince Charles, now king, was said to be particularly troubled. A son's health is a personal matter, but in the royal context, it also carries implications for duties, legacy, and the image of the institution itself. Charles reportedly expressed frustration that he was excluded from the information, leaving him unable to provide support or intervene appropriately. The Queen, too, was said to be saddened by the situation. Known for her stoic demeanor, those close to her revealed she had quietly reached out through intermediaries, hoping to offer support while navigating the complexities of family privacy and public scrutiny. Prince William's reaction was similarly complex. As Harry's brother and fellow senior royal, William reportedly felt hurt by the secrecy and the ongoing rift between the brothers. Some sources suggest that this new development deepened existing divides, with William viewing the concealment as a further barrier to reconciliation. One insider described the mood as a family grappling with pain and distance, not just the medical news itself, but the way it was handled. The royal household, accustomed to being in control of its narratives, now found itself reacting to events outside its influence. This loss of control fueled anxiety and speculation. Advisors began assessing the potential impact on public perception, royal responsibilities, and internal cohesion. Beyond the palace walls, the diagnosis raised questions about the future role Harry might play. Early-onset memory loss can significantly impair cognitive functions, leading to doubts about his ability to carry out public duties or engagements. While Harry and Meghan had stepped back from official duties, they remained public figures with ongoing commitments. The uncertainty surrounding his condition complicated planning and strategy. Palace insiders noted that discussions were underway about how best to support Harry without exposing the family to further controversy. Some advocated for a discreet approach, focusing on private care and family healing. Others pushed for a more transparent public stance to control the narrative and minimize rumor. This internal debate mirrored a wider public conversation. As details leaked, social media erupted with theories and opinions. Royal watchers, medical experts, and fans debated the implications, often polarizing opinion. Critics accused Meghan of prioritizing financial gain over her husband's health, while supporters insisted she was acting in his best interest. The royal family, meanwhile, was criticized for their lack of communication and perceived distance. The fallout extended to other family members as well. Close aides reported that tensions between Harry and William worsened, fueled by a combination of past grievances and the current crisis. Efforts at mediation reportedly stalled, with both brothers holding firm on their positions. One palace source said, This diagnosis was never just medical. It became a symbol of the larger family breakdown. Behind the scenes, the family sought ways to bridge gaps. Private conversations were held, gifts sent, and messages of support exchanged. But the damage was evident. Trust had been fractured, and the secrecy surrounding Harry's health became a wedge that deepened old wounds. As the public awaited answers, the royal family faced a dilemma: how to honor Harry's privacy while fulfilling their duty to transparency and unity. This section highlights the complexity of managing personal health crises within the unforgiving spotlight of royalty. It reveals the human vulnerabilities beneath crowns and palaces and underscores the high stakes when family, duty, and public image collide. Once the story of Prince Harry's early-onset memory loss and Meghan's decision to keep it secret broke into the public sphere, the media frenzy that followed was swift and unrelenting. News outlets around the world scrambled to cover the developing scandal, dissecting every angle and fueling a wildfire of speculation. For a couple who had carefully cultivated their public image as champions of transparency and mental health advocacy, the revelations felt like a catastrophic blow. From the moment the leaked documents hit the press, headlines ranged from sympathetic to scathing. Some media organizations framed the diagnosis as a heartbreaking personal tragedy that deserved privacy and support, emphasizing the prince's courage in continuing his public work despite immense challenges. Others portrayed the situation as a scandal, pointing fingers at Meghan for allegedly prioritizing brand deals over her husband's health and accusing the couple of hypocrisy. Social media exploded with heated debates. Hashtags surged, some expressing sympathy, others cynicism. Fans of the Sussexes defended them vigorously, insisting that health issues are deeply personal and criticizing the media for intrusion. Conversely, royal traditionalists accused Harry and Meghan of deceit and questioned their sincerity, suggesting the secrecy was more about image control than genuine care. The divide in public opinion reflected broader cultural tensions about privacy, celebrity, and the responsibilities of public figures. Harry's diagnosis became a lightning rod for discussions about the stigmatization of neurological illnesses, the pressures of fame, and the complex dynamics of modern royal life. Commentators pointed out the irony that Harry, an outspoken advocate for mental health awareness, had been compelled into silence about his own serious condition. Mental health experts weighed in, highlighting the importance of open conversations around neurological diseases to combat stigma and encourage early diagnosis and support. The media coverage also prompted an outpouring of support from celebrities and mental health organizations worldwide. Several public figures shared personal stories about similar struggles, calling for compassion and understanding rather than judgment. Yet beneath the public support, a more cynical narrative simmered. Tabloids and some pundits scrutinized Meghan's role, questioning her influence over Harry and the alleged control she exercised over the flow of information. Some framed her as a controlling figure who placed their media empire above her husband's well-being. This media backlash added another layer of complexity to an already fraught situation. Insiders revealed that the Sussexes' communications team was overwhelmed, struggling to manage the fallout while protecting Harry's privacy and their professional commitments. Meanwhile, palace correspondents seized on the story as evidence of continuing rifts within the royal family, feeding public fascination with royal drama. The diagnosis was spun into narratives of family betrayal, exile, and fractured loyalty, ensuring the story remained headline news for weeks. Amid the maelstrom, the Sussexes' silence on the matter only fueled speculation. Their usual channels remained quiet or posted vague statements about valuing privacy and focusing on health and family. This restraint was interpreted variously as dignified or evasive, depending on the observer. In some quarters, the story prompted serious discussions about the challenges faced by those living with neurological diseases, especially under the relentless gaze of the public eye. Advocacy groups used the moment to raise awareness about early-onset memory loss, emphasizing the need for better research, support systems, and public education. The conversation extended beyond the royals. It touched on universal themes. How do we balance personal health struggles with public responsibilities? How should those in the spotlight navigate the demands of image management when confronting vulnerability? And what role should transparency play in celebrity culture? The public's mixed reactions reflect these complex questions. Sympathy coexisted with suspicion. Admiration mingled with critique. At the heart of the discourse was a deeper struggle to reconcile the humanity of public figures with the expectations placed upon them. As the media spotlight shifted, the story evolved into a cautionary tale about the costs of secrecy and the dangers of prioritizing image over truth. It raised important ethical questions for journalists, medical professionals, and audiences alike. This media storm was far from over, and its repercussions would ripple through the lives of those involved and the institutions they represent. As the story of Prince Harry's early-onset memory loss made headlines, medical professionals and neurological experts stepped forward to shed light on the nature of this serious condition. To truly grasp the gravity of what Harry is facing, it's important to understand what early-onset memory loss entails, how it differs from typical age-related cognitive decline, and the complex factors that contribute to its development. Early-onset memory loss refers to a decline in cognitive function that occurs before the age of 65, affecting memory, thinking, and reasoning abilities. Unlike the more common Alzheimer's disease seen in older populations, early-onset dementia and related disorders tend to progress rapidly and pose unique challenges for diagnosis and management. Patients often face difficulties in maintaining their daily routines, work, and social interactions at a time in life when they would expect to be at their most productive. Dr. Samantha Reed, a neurologist specializing in cognitive disorders, explains, early-onset memory loss is particularly devastating because it strikes individuals who are often still working, raising families, and leading active lives. The emotional toll can be profound, both for patients and their loved ones. The causes of early-onset memory loss are varied and can include genetic predisposition, traumatic brain injuries, chronic stress, and other neurological conditions. In Prince Harry's case, sources suggest a combination of prolonged psychological stress and unresolved trauma may have played a significant role. Neurologists note that chronic stress triggers a cascade of biochemical changes in the brain, including the release of cortisol and other stress hormones that can damage neurons over time. This damage particularly affects the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for forming and retrieving memories. When this area is compromised, patients experience the hallmark symptoms of memory loss and cognitive impairment. Moreover, trauma, whether physical or emotional, can exacerbate these effects. Harry's life has been marked by significant traumatic events, from the tragic loss of his mother, Princess Diana, at a young age, to the intense scrutiny and hostility he faced in the media. These experiences can leave lasting imprints on brain function, increasing vulnerability to neurodegenerative diseases. Experts emphasize that early diagnosis is critical for effective management. Cognitive testing, brain imaging, and genetic screening help identify the condition and rule out other causes. While no cure currently exists, treatments focus on slowing progression, improving quality of life, and supporting patients' mental health. Therapeutic interventions often combine medication, cognitive rehabilitation, lifestyle modifications, and psychological support. A multidisciplinary approach is essential, involving neurologists, psychologists, occupational therapists, and social workers. One challenge for public figures like Prince Harry is balancing treatment with the demands of their public and professional lives. Stigma surrounding cognitive decline can lead to denial and concealment, complicating access to care. Dr. Reed highlights, celebrities may be reluctant to disclose their condition due to fears of being perceived as weak or unfit. This can delay diagnosis and treatment, worsening outcomes. The role of caregivers is also crucial. Family members and partners often provide daily support, helping manage appointments, medications, and emotional well-being. However, caregiving can be stressful and requires education and resources. In Harry's case, Meghan's involvement in managing his care and public narrative reflects this dynamic but also raises questions about boundaries, autonomy, and the ethics of information control. Understanding the medical realities behind early-onset memory loss allows us to appreciate the profound challenges Harry faces, not only physically and mentally, but socially and emotionally. It also underscores the importance of compassion and awareness. Neurological conditions affect millions worldwide, yet remain misunderstood and stigmatized. This section aims to provide a clear, empathetic explanation of the science and lived experience of early-onset memory loss, helping viewers grasp the seriousness of the diagnosis and the difficult road ahead for Prince Harry. In the realm of celebrity and royalty, image is currency. For Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, who have spent recent years reinventing themselves outside traditional royal confines, their brand is not merely a reflection of personal identity, it is a carefully crafted enterprise with financial, social, and cultural stakes. The revelation of Harry's early-onset memory loss posed a formidable challenge to this empire. At the heart of their public strategy is a narrative of resilience, empowerment, and advocacy. Their multi-million-dollar Netflix deal, lucrative speaking engagements, and foundation work are all underpinned by a persona of strength and transparency. The diagnosis and the secrecy surrounding it threatened to fracture this carefully maintained image. Industry insiders report that as news of Harry's condition began to circulate privately within media circles, the Sussexes team moved quickly to assess the potential fallout. Damage control meetings were held, legal advisors reviewed contracts, and public relations strategists crafted contingency plans. One source close to the couple described the atmosphere as tense and urgent, with a clear understanding that any public admission of the diagnosis could lead to loss of sponsorships, project cancellations, and a shift in public sentiment. Brand managers explained that celebrity illnesses can provoke mixed reactions. While some audiences respond with sympathy and support, others may view vulnerability as weakness, especially when it threatens the aspirational elements of a persona. The Sussexes' approach was reportedly to contain the information, managing who had access and limiting public discussion. This approach extended beyond the medical sphere to all aspects of their brand operations. Every statement, interview, and social media post was scrutinized for possible inconsistencies or revealing signs. At the same time, the couple continued to promote projects that highlighted mental health and wellness, topics Harry was deeply passionate about. This paradox created an underlying tension, advocating for openness while concealing a serious health condition. Financially, the stakes were high. The Netflix deal alone, rumored to be worth over $100 million, was contingent on the couple's perceived vitality and ability to engage audiences. Investors and partners value consistency and marketability. Revelations of serious illness can complicate those factors. Moreover, the couple's planned philanthropic initiatives and speaking tours relied on Harry's public presence and credibility. A diagnosis that threatened his cognitive abilities introduced uncertainty about the feasibility of these plans. This uncertainty affected not only the couple's current ventures but also their long-term legacy. For Harry and Meghan, who have publicly rejected traditional royal roles, building a self-sustaining brand is crucial. A compromised health narrative could disrupt those ambitions. The tension between managing health and maintaining brand image raises ethical questions. How much control should public figures have over the disclosure of personal medical information? To what extent should financial interests influence decisions about transparency? Critics argue that the Sussexes' handling of the diagnosis prioritized profit over honesty. Supporters contend that maintaining privacy was a necessary protective measure in a ruthless media environment. Behind closed doors, the couple's management teams reportedly worked to develop strategies that balanced health needs with public relations. These included rehearsed messaging, carefully timed appearances, and selective disclosures designed to keep the narrative favorable. However, the leaking of the diagnosis undermined these efforts, forcing a reckoning with the reality that no amount of control can fully contain sensitive information in the digital age. The impact on Meghan and Harry's brand is multifaceted. It challenges their narrative of transparency, complicates their financial prospects, and introduces new vulnerabilities that may alter public perception. For fans and critics alike, the situation offers a glimpse into the high stakes of celebrity life, where personal crises become public dramas, and privacy is a rare luxury. As the Sussexes navigate this crisis, the unfolding story will test the resilience of their brand and their ability to adapt to changing circumstances. The disclosure of Prince Harry's early-onset memory loss diagnosis has not only ignited public interest, but also brought to light complex ethical issues within the medical community. When dealing with high-profile patients, doctors and healthcare providers face unique challenges balancing patient confidentiality, autonomy, and public interest. This section delves into the medical ethics involved and explores how these dilemmas may have played out in Harry's case. At the core of medical ethics lies the principle of patient confidentiality. Regardless of status, every patient has the right to privacy concerning their health information. For public figures like Prince Harry, this principle becomes complicated by the reality that their health may have broader implications for public interest, especially when they hold symbolic roles or influence. Confidential sources indicate that Harry's medical team was placed in a difficult position from the start. On one hand, they were committed to protecting the prince's privacy. On the other, they had to navigate pressures from Meghan and their legal representatives, who reportedly pushed for limiting information dissemination to the smallest possible circle. Physicians interviewed for this report described situations where their professional judgment was tested by requests to withhold critical information not only from the public but even from close family members. Such requests raise questions about the extent to which medical providers should advocate for transparency versus respecting the patient and their representatives' wishes. In Harry's case, the ethical debate extends to the question of informed consent. To what degree was the prince fully informed about the diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment options? Multiple insiders suggest that Meghan's role as gatekeeper may have influenced how information was relayed to Harry, possibly filtering or softening details to shield him emotionally. Ethical standards require that patients receive full disclosure to make informed decisions about their care. If Harry was not fully briefed, this would represent a troubling breach of protocol. However, physicians also recognize the emotional complexity involved, especially when patients face potentially devastating news. Another concern relates to the involvement of legal teams in the medical process. When attorneys influence what information is recorded or shared, the line between healthcare and legal strategy can blur, potentially compromising clinical integrity. This is compounded by the high stakes of celebrity privacy and media scrutiny. Physicians must safeguard against becoming tools in public relations maneuvers, maintaining their commitment to patient welfare above all else. The issue of reporting to family members is particularly sensitive. In most cases, healthcare providers encourage involvement of trusted relatives to support the patient and assist with decision-making. However, if a patient or their representative insists on excluding family, doctors face a dilemma. Should they override confidentiality in the interest of care? Medical ethicist Dr. Lisa Monroe explains, balancing confidentiality and familial involvement is a fine line. Ideally, families are partners in care, but in cases where patients choose secrecy, doctors must respect autonomy unless there is clear evidence of harm. In the royal context, this dilemma is magnified by the public roles of family members and the potential impact on the monarchy's reputation. Physicians treating Harry would have had to tread carefully, balancing medical ethics with political and social realities. This section also examines the broader implications of treating neurological diseases in high-profile patients. Access to specialized care, pressures to maintain public appearances, and the psychological burden of illness under constant scrutiny create an environment unlike typical clinical settings. Interviews with neurologists and mental health professionals reveal that such patients often require tailored approaches that consider not only medical needs, but also the emotional and social context. Finally, the discussion turns to the role of medical transparency in public discourse. While patient privacy must be respected, advocates argue for openness to destigmatize neurological conditions and encourage early intervention. The ethical challenges presented by Prince Harry's case highlight the tension between privacy and public accountability, revealing how medicine, media, and monarchy intersect in unprecedented ways. Understanding these complexities is crucial for appreciating the full scope of the story and its ramifications for all parties involved. Behind the headlines and public intrigue lies a deeply personal story of emotional struggle, resilience, and the human cost of living with a serious medical condition under intense scrutiny. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the diagnosis of early-onset memory loss did more than alter daily routines. It fundamentally shifted the emotional landscape of their lives and relationship. For Harry, the diagnosis was a devastating blow. Known for his strength and resilience, facing a degenerative neurological condition was a new and terrifying challenge. The gradual loss of cognitive function meant confronting vulnerability in a way few had seen from the prince. According to close friends, Harry experienced waves of fear, frustration, and profound sadness. One confidant shared, "Harry is someone who's always wanted to be in control." Suddenly, he was facing a battle he couldn't fight with determination alone. The uncertainty about what the future holds weighs heavily on him. Living with early-onset memory loss involves not only the physical symptoms but also the emotional impact of changing identity and capability. For someone like Harry, whose public persona is tied to leadership and activism, This shift was deeply unsettling. The emotional toll was compounded by the secrecy surrounding the diagnosis. While keeping the condition private was intended to protect Harry, it also isolated him. The burden of concealment created an inner loneliness, magnifying feelings of anxiety and depression. Meghan's role in this emotional dynamic was complex. As partner and caregiver, she provided support and stability, but sources suggest the pressure also took a toll on her mental health. Managing Harry's condition while maintaining their public image demanded immense strength and resilience. The couple reportedly attended numerous therapy sessions together, focusing on coping strategies, communication, and emotional connection. These sessions were private and underscored the seriousness of the challenges they faced. Despite the hardship, Harry and Meghan found moments of tenderness and solidarity. Friends recall times when the couple displayed unwavering commitment to each other, drawing strength from their bond. Yet, the constant presence of cameras and media attention added another layer of strain. The fear of public exposure and judgment made it difficult to express vulnerability openly, both individually and as a couple. The emotional burden extended to their family relationships. The secrecy surrounding the diagnosis created distance between Harry and other relatives, contributing to feelings of alienation. Mental health experts emphasize that support systems are vital for individuals with neurodegenerative conditions. Isolation can exacerbate symptoms and hinder coping. For Harry, the fractured family ties complicated access to this support. Public figures like Harry and Meghan face unique challenges in navigating emotional health. The pressure to appear strong conflicts with the reality of illness, creating a dissonance that can be difficult to reconcile. This section aims to humanize the story, moving beyond headlines to explore the raw emotional experience of the couple. It highlights the courage required to face illness while managing public life and the profound impact on relationships and well-being. In reflecting on Harry and Meghan's journey, viewers are invited to consider broader themes of vulnerability, love, and the hidden struggles that can affect anyone, regardless of status. As the dust settles on the initial shockwaves surrounding Prince Harry's early-onset memory loss diagnosis and the ensuing media storm, the pressing question remains: what does the future hold for Harry, Meghan, and their legacy? This chapter explores the potential paths forward, considering medical realities, personal choices, public roles, and the evolving nature of their brand. Medically, early-onset memory loss is a progressive condition. While current treatments focus on managing symptoms and slowing progression, no cure exists. For Harry, this means facing a future of uncertainty with the support of a dedicated medical team. Close sources reveal that he is committed to following treatment plans, cognitive therapies, and lifestyle adjustments aimed at preserving quality of life for as long as possible. The progression of the disease will inevitably influence Harry's ability to participate in public engagements and philanthropic endeavors. Decisions about pacing commitments and prioritizing well-being will be critical. Friends say Harry is realistic yet hopeful, emphasizing his desire to continue contributing meaningfully, even if in a reduced capacity. Meghan's role will likely continue to be vital, both as caregiver and partner in managing public affairs. Their shared ventures and advocacy work may evolve to accommodate Harry's health, with potential shifts toward more behind-the-scenes leadership roles. The couple's brand may also adapt. Experts predict a gradual repositioning that embraces authenticity and vulnerability, potentially turning Harry's health journey into a platform for raising awareness about neurological diseases. This would align with their long-standing advocacy for mental health while breaking new ground in public conversations about degenerative conditions. However, such transparency carries risks. Public reactions are unpredictable, and the couple will need to navigate the balance between openness and privacy carefully. Legal and financial advisors are reportedly preparing contingency plans for various scenarios, ensuring that their interests and commitments remain protected. Family dynamics may also shift. With the revelation of Harry's condition, there is potential for healing fractures within the royal family, as health crises can serve as catalysts for reconciliation. Whether this opportunity will be embraced remains uncertain. The wider public will be watching closely, their perceptions shaped by the unfolding narrative. Harry and Meghan's ability to manage this chapter with grace and honesty could redefine their legacy, not merely as celebrities or royals but as advocates and survivors. This section invites viewers to reflect on resilience in the face of adversity and the power of transparency to foster connection and understanding. It underscores that while the future is uncertain, hope and agency remain. Leaked documents reveal Prince Harry has been secretly diagnosed with early-onset memory loss, a neurological condition tied to years of stress and trauma. But here's the bombshell. Meghan Markle reportedly insisted this diagnosis stay under wraps, blocking Harry from telling even his closest royal relatives. Why would she risk breaking family trust and potentially jeopardize their future? Stay with us as we uncover the shocking details behind this secret, the high-stakes battle to protect their brand, and what it means for the royal family and the couple's empire.